Hi, everyone. My name is Pim. Welcome to the podcast. I am a Cornell alumni. I graduated in civil engineering in 2024, and I'm currently a Baker student graduating in 2026.
Hello, my name is Yuhjin. I'm also a Cornell alumni, class of 2025, civil engineering, and currently I'm a master's student at Seoul National University.
Today, we're going to dive into the hot topic of renewable energy with our very special guest, which is our professor, Professor Francis Vanek. We've both taken his classes in transportation engineering, renewable energy, and engineering economics. He recently received the Albert R. George Endowed Faculty Award for Student Project Teams Mentorship from Cornell Engineering. Huge congratulations, Professor.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
So one thing I really enjoy about Professor Vanek is how thoughtful and supportive he is. You can tell that he genuinely cares about his students, and just the way he structures his content and problem sets is really clear and manageable. So it really left a big impact on me because I was never really overwhelmed whenever I took any of his classes.
Another great thing I love about Professor Vanek's classes is he tries to connect each lecture across all disciplines. So I learned something from the arts of renewable energy or something from the news. And I think that each problem set that I've had with Professor Vanek, each problem gives me a different angle. Like recently, we were doing problem sets on wind energy, and I had to go on the wind resource map to see like the different average wind speeds in the United States map. So that was very, very interesting. So we're both very excited to have you, Professor Vanek. Welcome. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I am also a Cornell alumnus. I graduated in 1991 from Cornell. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and actually also a Bachelor of Arts in Asian Studies. I had a strong focus on Japanese language. So I worked for a while as a interpreter in the auto industry. But then more recently, I earned a doctoral degree from University of Pennsylvania in systems engineering, and I've been at Cornell pretty much for 25 years, let's call it. So a quarter of a century as a member of faculty here. And I said, for most of that time, I've been appointed in the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and my interests are, I think, as you already mentioned in the podcast, renewable energy, sustainable transportation, and also engineering economics. Yeah.
Awesome. So, before we dive into our first section of the podcast, if you were to explain the renewable energies field to someone who's not really familiar, why is renewable energy important and why do we need to care?
Sure. You could break that down to two main factors. So one is climate protection. Renewable energy, once it is installed, doesn't emit any greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So it doesn't contribute to growing concentration of greenhouse gases and increasing global average temperature. And the other one is energy security. So our primary energy source is fossil fuels, but those are non-renewable, and to varying degrees, they will come up against scarcity problems. If not now, then sometime in probably the near future. So that's a couple of reasons to be interested in renewable energy.
Great, thank you so much. And I just want to ease into our first topic, which is the challenges of scaling renewables to meet rising demand and whether they can fully replace fossil fuels, and just sort of touching on the roles of nuclear and natural gas in this transition too. So my first question is, what are some of the biggest challenges to scaling renewable energy so it can meet global demand? And how would you say the challenges that we're experiencing right now compared to past time periods such as the Industrial Revolution?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So the challenge with scaling is you need many different ingredients. So you need capital investment, you need places to extract the resources that are used in renewable energy, factories to build the equipment. You need sites where you can install it. You need uh, greater transmission and storage capacity. All of these things, um, if we could like wave a magic wand and have them happen instantly, that would be great too, in terms of reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases. But unfortunately, they all take times, even though as we're under a lot of stress from the negative impacts of climate change. So that's some of the challenges we're having. We are in general around the world, like it's going faster, but changing the infrastructure inherently takes time. So that's one of the obstacles.
Exactly. So just to piggyback off of that thought, do you think that renewable energies can replace non-renewables like fossil fuel entirely, or will there always be some sort of limitation?
Well, if you start from the point of view of like how much total solar energy or wind energy there is in nature, those are kind of the two largest ones. Uh, the amount is that's a- available at any given instant is much, much larger than the like our demand. So in theory, if you build enough infrastructure, yeah, you can capture and store and distribute the amount of renewable energy that we need. Some of the questions are though, some of the for example, rare earth metals that are used in renewable energy, could we extract a sufficient amount in a sustainable way, and then also like recycle them at the end of the life. So those are open questions, and we kind of don't know because we've never had renewable energy at that scale before.
Mhm.
It's possible that the uh, we might end up like using, for example, more nuclear energy if that's something that can happen long term. So, for example, like nuclear fusion is something that could, in theory, also there's so the fuel source is so vast that if you could make it work, that could also last for a long time. One of the problems with fossil fuels is even if setting aside the climate change problem, the fact that they will run out at best in several generations. There just isn't enough to indefinitely support our industrial society around the world.
All right. So
And did I get all the parts of that question? Yeah, go ahead.
well, thanks. Those are very insightful points about the challenges of scaling and also the angle of non-renewables as well. So I would like to zoom in a bit and explore more of like some of the key innovations and technologies in renewable energy today. There's a lot happening that could reshape how we generate, store, and use clean energy. With that, what are some newer, timeless renewable energy technologies that inspire you? And what made those, what are the key elements of those projects that made it successful? You can feel free to talk more about this from a commercial real estate or transportation perspective.
Yeah, so a few key things there. So a lot of it came down to being able to make technology at an affordable cost. So, for example, we've known about the photovoltaic effect is maybe one of the most important ones. So that is turning sunlight directly into electric current. That's been known about already since like the 1800s, but it wasn't clear that it would ever become so cheap to build and install that it would really be available on a widespread basis. However, even in the time that I've been teaching at Cornell, that just it was like a huge corner was turned there, and now it is in many locations, depending on how much sun there is, that's like the cheapest way alongside wind energy to make electricity. Same thing with wind energy. Like we've known about windmills for hundreds of years, but being able to build large wind turbines that are both large enough and strong enough to be able to, over a lifetime, make lots of electricity at a affordable cost. Again, that's really happened in the last like only 30 or 40 years. And then one other one, since you mentioned transportation, bringing the cost of battery electric vehicles down to where they're on a par with a gasoline powered vehicle. So meaning you have to pay something more for the battery system in the car up front, but then you can make that back in terms of just lower energy cost per mile as you're driving the vehicle through its life. So those are three examples.
Are there any projects that are your favorite so far?
Oh, I have many, but I'll just pick one. Is the ability to build offshore wind turbines, and especially ones that are now they're working on that are floating offshore wind turbines. So you're not limited to just where the water's very shallow. You still have to. It has to be shallow enough that you could anchor the wind turbine to the seafloor with some kind of like a heavy anchor system. But those ones that this huge platform is floating and at the same time has a wind turbine on top of it that is generating electricity. That's a pretty amazing invention. But there are many others that I could talk about.
Mhm. Yeah, I imagine like because always see like the topic of offshore wind energy on the news nowadays, even though it can be more expensive than onshore.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes there's, even if it's more expensive offshore, depending on if it's near to an electricity market, like let's say in New England, that the price of electricity is high, and like onshore wind, if there isn't a transmission system to get the electricity like you could generate electricity maybe more cheaply in the Midwest, but that's thousands of miles away, and you need to take into account the cost of transmission and the losses that are involved, and so on. So sometimes the economics can still work out favorably.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, this is sort of our halfway point, and we've
Okay.
covered some great ground so far. So, if you could lead us through your traditional stretch break that you'd always
Yes,
give in
yes.
class, that'd be lovely.
I'll also I'll give a little background that there's some I'm very interested in like like being healthy in your body in your engineering work or real estate development work for them, whatever you end up doing. So, like one thing is like not to sit too long without stretching. So today we're gonna stretch seated, but sometimes we would stand up. But yeah, you can stretch seated as well. So let's do if you'll hook your arm around your seat and then pull yourself towards your arm. So you're doing a little spinal twist there. Okay. And then you can go the other way. So come back to the middle and then go the other way. All right. Stretching there. All right. And then come back to the middle. And you can pull your palms together and push towards the screen. All right. And now push up. I'm going to disappear, I think, a little bit, but then push up. And now go to your right and come up and go to your left. All right, good. And then you can come back to the middle and we'll do a little bit of neck stretching. So looking straight ahead, drop your chin to your chest and now bring your chin to your left shoulder and then back down. And this is called the gully. And then bring your chin to your right shoulder and back down. So now you can bring yourself so you're looking straight ahead again, neutral chin. And now we'll do the rainbow. So lifting up and drop your chin to your left shoulder again. And then up and to the right shoulder. So making the shape of a rainbow with your chin. And then up and look straight ahead. And we'll do one more here. So now drop your ear to your left shoulder. And then come up and look straight ahead and drop your ear to your right shoulder. And come up. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for joining the stretch break.
Thank you, just like old times.
Just like old times. Yeah. Yep.
And now I want to sort of transition into the next topic. So I want to touch on the global landscape sort of section of renewable
Okay.
energies. And I'm wondering which countries are leading the way in renewable energy and what makes their approaches unique?
Sure. The country right now that has installed the most in renewable energy and is also manufacturing the most and installing the fastest is China. One of the things that benefits there is, uh, in general, being like a strong manufacturing country. So having gotten very good at manufacturing everything from consumer electronics to high-speed trains to and now like solar panels, wind turbines, and then having a strong like policy in policy framework to push it forward, partly to reduce um, greenhouse gas emissions because it is the country that emits the most, although on a per capita basis, not as much as the United States. But then also partly for reasons of air quality. So if you're uh, uh, by moving and the energy source away from fossil fuels to re renewables in China, that helps to lower the total amount of air pollutant. And I've heard anecdotally from like let's say students from China, just talking to them, it seems like the air is starting to get better. It used to be like the big cities in China, like let's say Beijing, had by U.S. standards just really poor air quality, worse than like we would have in a big American city. But then it seems like maybe it's getting better now, so it's starting to pay off. I have to compare it to the United States. It's not like a political any kind of political statement. Just say like right now the Trump administration is not promoting renewable energy, is actually actively undermining it. So if you're trying to lower greenhouse gas emissions, that doesn't help. But that's not how, if I were the leader, that's not what I would do. I'll just put it that way. Um, Oh, but
Are
maybe
there any
oh, sorry, I'll just add to that though. But some of the states like California and New York State and some of the other states are continuing to promote renewable. So at least that it's happening on that level.
Right, right, right. But I'm also wondering, like, are there any standout countries, maybe some you wouldn't expect that are on the rise in terms of having like great renewable sort of approaches or tactics?
Yeah, let's see. You might not hear about Australia in the news a lot, but so yeah, I'll do Australia and then I'll do one other. But it turns out like it's a very sunny country, also with a very distributed population. So it lends itself to a lot of residential solar. So if you look it up, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but a huge fraction of houses in Australia now have solar panels on the roof. Another standout country we've been talking about lately in my class is Pakistan. So Pakistan has a high electricity cost, also kind of an antiquated grid, not very efficient, not very reliable. And they're right next to China, and they have a strong trading relationship with China. And there's just been like a boom in how much residential distributed solar is being installed in Pakistan. Like in one year, one calendar year, the market grew by like a factor of three times. It just so many factors are supporting that. Not least of which, so Pakistan, I know, has been suffered a lot from extreme weather due to climate change and also high temperature. So you could imagine people there are highly motivated to do something about it. And one thing they can do is to install solar energy. Yeah, so that's a couple.
Okay. Well, very insightful, Professor. Next, we would like to go over implementation realities of renewables. Maybe you touched a little bit on that when you were talking about affordable costs of different projects, but I I just think that it's great to go over some of the things that we talked in class, specifically metrics like levelized cost of energy, where you encourage us to calculate those often. So how has levelized cost of energy changed for different kinds of renewables during the past years, and what factors have been contributing to the reduction or increase of their values?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So I would say if if we just take like solar photovoltaic, when I started teaching about renewable energy, like right around 2004, 2005, a cost that might have been roughly 12 cents per kilowatt hour, it's now down to 6 cents per kilowatt hour. And even cheaper if you're doing it like a utility scale. And as a result, you get um, uh, 250 gigawatt solar farms, and then sorry, 250 megawatt, and then 1,000 megawatts, so 1 gigawatt, 2 gigawatts in a huge solar farm brings the cost down. Sometimes the cost will actually now it's cheap enough that it's sort of sensitive to what's happening in the market, and if there's some kind of disruption, then maybe actually the cost goes up a little bit rather than down. But I don't anticipate it, going back to that 12 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's been a huge change. I would put an asterisk next to that though. So like a fossil fuel plant, you pay something to build the plant, but then the largest single cost is actually going to be the fuel. And the fuel will like the payments for the fuel 5, 10, 15 years out in the future, you don't even have to think about those things. Whereas the for renewable energy, all the money has to change for all the capital costs, which is most of it, has to change hands up front, and that makes it challenging. So sometimes if you just look at levelized costs and you don't consider that factor, that's an important factor.
For someone who has not studied levelized cost of energy, why do you think this is a good metric to measure the effectiveness of the energy source?
Oh yeah, sure. So because if you just look at the installed cost, uh, especially between, let's say, uh, a renewable energy that's mostly capital cost, except for biomass, the energy is itself is effectively free. Um, versus a fossil fuel where like I was saying, the largest single cost is the cost of the fuel, without looking at spreading out the initial cost over some lifetime, and then adding in the ongoing costs like fuel costs or any maintenance cost overhead. You if you Because the other thing you could look at is like what does it cost per let's say kilowatt of capacity to install wind, solar, natural gas, what have you. And that doesn't tell you if you like rank it in that order, where those land in terms of cost. That doesn't tell you how effective, like how economically effective it's going to be.
Hmm. Thanks for elaborating more on that.
Sure, yeah, happy to do it.
Another metric
Um,
talked a lot about in class is like capacity factor.
yeah.
Um, how different technologies can be adapted to increase capacity factor for more power to be extracted. So, for example, in class, you mentioned about like how solar panels can tilt according to the position of the sun throughout the day because they have like different solar altitudes, right? What are the kinds of ways in which renewable resources can be adapted for more power extraction when balancing against its cost and intermittency?
Sure. Yeah. So you already pointed to one of them. You could spend more money up front to have a solar panel that tracks the sun rather than stays in a fixed position. But because it's going to be more closely facing the sun, it's going to produce more power. So if we define capacity factor as like the actual amount that it made over some period of time, like a year, divided by like what it could have made if it was at 100%, which is of course impossible for an intermittent source, that we're increasing the capacity factor. Another thing though is just making it more reliable. So the more reliable the technology is, the less downtime, the more productive it can be, and that's also going to increase capacity factor. And if you look at the like wind energy in the United States over the last 20, 25 years, that capacity factor, the average across the whole industry has just been creeping up and up as it's gotten better and better. Um, Maybe one more there I would add is for wind having better control over the angle of attack of the wind turbine blades, better understanding the wind resources. So then you can like optimize what's the angle of the wind turbine blades, and that's also going to make them more productive and improve capacity factor.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for all the
Sure, you're welcome.
insight. Like the solar panel example, like I was
Sure.
definitely familiar with like in class, but learning about like the wind turbines and other things like that just like really opened up a different door to me, and like that was really exciting to hear about even for myself. So, I want to transition into our final segment, which is like talking more towards future vision. So, as described earlier, there have been significant advances in renewable energies, which support the net zero goal. However, we can't ignore like the rapid growth in AI, which is quite energy intensive. So, I want to know, how do you think that cities and or transportation systems, how can they be redesigned so their infrastructure fits a renewable friendly standard?
Sure. So the both cities and transportation systems can become more energy efficient. That will just naturally happen as like say like in transportation, old vehicles wear out. The new vehicles that are coming along are more energy efficient, so that cycles through. But um, to the extent that you can have policies that you can make the new technologies that are coming in even more efficient, right? Like if you have a higher standard, then that's your opportunity to make them more efficient as the new generation comes in. Another thing is, can you switch them from a like a tech, in the case of transportation, a technology that emits greenhouse gases to one that doesn't have tailpipe emissions. A really good example of that was the United States Postal Service has all these delivery vans that run around. Historically, they would, of course, all been powered by probably gasoline, maybe some by diesel. And so they put some in as electric, and so now those are not those deliver postal delivery vehicles don't have any tailpipe emissions. If you couple that with carbon-free electricity from solar and wind, now you have a carbon-free solution. Unfortunately, though, in the end, it landed up like not being as ambitious. It wasn't 100%. It was a fraction of them, and so that was a little disappointing that they couldn't have done they could have done that because then now you've got this um, carbon emitting vehicle that has to run its life and then it could be replaced with an electric vehicle. But maybe on like a more positive note, you may have seen now Amazon they teamed up with this electric vehicle maker Rivian to make all electric delivery vans. And so more and more of their Amazon delivery vans are moving over to electric. And similar examples could be like in terms of like residences making them more efficient. But that's just like one example.
Has there been discussion in like the research or in the faculty about like using AI to monitor energy?
Uh, yeah, I know in general that is out there. So the clearly like AI it's kind of right now it's sort of a mixed bag. It is consuming a lot of creating a lot of additional energy demand, and in fact, when the supply chain for providing solar and wind is limited, what may happen is the AI demand comes along and will like buy up the new solar and wind devices that are being produced that otherwise somebody else would have bought. But in general, like it is because it's lucrative, right? They can pay top dollar for that power. So I think what we're going to see in the short run is there going to be like kind of a lag in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. On the other hand, although this is not my area, definitely it could like monitoring or finding better solutions using AI that's a possible win. And what I kind of in an optimistic vision of this question, I would say the additional greenhouse gas emission problem that's temporary until we figure out how to power everything with carbon-free electricity. But the know-how that is learned using AI that wasn't otherwise available, once you know it, that's permanent, right? So that's and, I mean, and it could also. Uh, I have to kind of cover all the bases here. Like a more pessimistic outcome is that AI and a bunch of other things mean that we don't end up uh, dealing with climate change as rapidly as we need to, and then there's just like a lot more kind of disruption and basically human suffering that could have been avoided if we had kind of gone on a different path. Maybe we'll touch on this again, but I mean I'm long-term optimistic about how this will play out, but yeah, I can see. I mean, we're just talking about we're a 1 year anniversary of Hurricane Helene in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. So much destruction, and and people didn't like that. We didn't even see that really coming. That would happen in deep in the not on the coast, but deep in the mountains. That was kind of a wake up call.
Yeah, I can imagine natural disasters are always very, very,
Yeah. And natural, like there's newer ones like that we didn't anticipate, and at the same time, we're learning all the time, and we're learning how better to prepare for them and recover from them. So we're always learning.
yeah.
Mm.
I'm sure there's something in the next 2 months that would roll out since everything's updating very fast.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up our discussion for today. So before we leave, Professor Vanek, if there's one takeaway from this podcast that you would like our audience to remember, what would that be?
I would say just to keep your eye on the long term. Maybe even I'll borrow a as an expression from the United States civil rights movement. You may have heard the phrase "keep your eye on the prize." So you have to keep looking at the head. There may be ups and downs, like it's again coming back to our discussion. It was unfortunate that like for example the Trump administration right now is trying to block like the completion of offshore wind farms. That doesn't help. But you got to keep your eye on the prize, right? The offshore wind is happening in other countries. We can always come back and complete those projects. If not now, then in the future. And so, yeah, I guess that would be one thing. Yep.
Yeah, that's such an important takeaway. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
I also want to ask, like, are there any projects or publications that you would recommend to our audience?
Um, Yeah, I think that the since we all have a Cornell connection, like watching how Cornell moves forward with decarbonizing the campus, because like every that project kind of covers every aspect of decarbonizing kind of the whole planet on a small scale. So everything. Building efficiency, access to renewable energy. How do you heat the campus in the winter? What about all the vehicles that Cornell operates? A little thing I was excited to see for the first time this semester, I was able to borrow from the Cornell fleet a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. 5 or 10 years ago, those they weren't there, but it's starting to come in. So yeah,
No, yeah, that's a good one. Thank you for sharing.
yeah, definitely.
And I know you've been very busy lately, and I even heard from Pim lately that your renewable energy textbook that we use in class was recently translated to Korean and Chinese. So that's very exciting. Um,
Yeah, sure.
could you
I
share like about that and maybe even let us know where people can access this and some of your other works?
Yeah, so that is like my primary work. I occasionally publish a journal paper, but not very often anymore, partly because I really am I'm very focused on the textbooks that I use. If you yeah, you could go to Barnes and Noble or Amazon or just the publisher's McGraw-Hill, and I think look at my last name, Vanek. But the two textbooks are Energy Systems Engineering is the energy one, and then Sustainable Transportation Systems Engineering is the transportation textbook. The energy one, yeah, we're currently working on the with my co-authors on the fifth edition, and so that's it'll come out when yeah, it'll come out when it comes out. But we were aiming for sometime in 2026. It might slip to 2027. But in the meantime, there's a fourth edition that came out in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for your
amazing. Thank
interest. I
you so
appreciate it. Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that wraps it up here. So huge thank you to you, Professor Vanek, for sharing your expertise and your perspective on renewable energies. It was really great having you here with us this morning, and just thank you to everyone else who's watching, and thank you for your time.
Yeah. You're welcome. And thank you as well for inviting me onto your podcast. Enjoy the day.